Hey there, greetings from Portland, Maine. I'm up here to do a keynote for the American College of Healthcare Administrators, and I wanted to take a minute to address a question that comes up a lot from people who are switching careers into a new industry, or folks who are getting their first job out of college, where they're in their resume right now, there isn't a lot of industry-specific experience for the job that they're going for. Now that can be a problem with resumes and bots, and there's not a lot of getting around that. But when you're talking to a person, there is. And the best principle, the best way I can illustrate this principle is to say, remember Hansel and Gretel. See, when we tell children the story of Hansel and Gretel, about this boy and girl who went out into the woods and got lost, but they found a house made of gingerbread and candy, and there was a nice lady inside who invited them in and fed them all kinds of food until they were completely stuffed. But then she took one of the children and threw them in the oven. Now, the kids managed to get away. Justice was served. At the end of that story, we don't have to say to children, be careful of old ladies in the woods and gingerbread houses. They extract that lesson from the story without being told. But more than that, they extract the lesson and extrapolate it much more widely, understanding that it's not just old ladies in gingerbread houses you got to watch out for. Any adult could seem nice, but really be a monster. That principle applies when you're trying to illustrate something about yourself that's relevant to a position, but from a different industry or from your life before professional work in offices and things like that. So, for example, when I could tell you that I'm responsible and a self-starter, and as soon as I say those things, your mind is going to go, maybe, we'll see. As soon as someone makes a claim, our brains kind of want to pump the brakes and say, we'll check that out for ourselves. So you become immediately defensive and kind of mentally reject the claim. However, instead of making a claim or resorting to my resume, I could just tell you about how the summer after high school, I worked at a camp. And as a counselor, we had to go there a week ahead of time and put the docks in the pond and clean up the dining hall. And one day we had to clear brush from the archery range. And now the main archery range was really wide, but then there was this skinny part that was sort of the long distance archery lane. And everybody was working on the big part. I get assigned to the small part. And so I'm working in this area by myself, and it's hot and sweaty and buggy and gross. And I can hear everyone else laughing over on the big range. And eventually the supervisor came along to check on all of us. And when he came to check on me, you doing all right? He's like, yeah. He's like, oh, okay, good progress, looks good. And I said, well, hold on, before you go, what'd I do? And he said, what do you mean, what'd you do? And I said, well, I can hear everybody over there laughing and talking and joking and having a great time, and I'm over here by myself. What'd I do so I don't do it again? And he got this funny look on his face, and he said, no. I have you over here working by yourself because I know I can. You're going to get it done. I don't need somebody watching you. I learned something that day about the way that he saw me and maybe the way that I saw myself. But if I tell that story, you come away with an impression of, here's someone who's responsible, a self-starter who will see the job through without me having to make any of those claims. And it doesn't matter what job I'm applying for, those traits are useful. So the fact that those traits showed up while clearing brush and debris out of an archery range, that has nothing to do with IT or marketing or healthcare or anything else. But applying to any of those jobs and telling that story, people would understand something true about the kind of person that I am that would be useful. So you don't have to tell stories that relate to the industry you're in. And in fact, it's one of the best ways to show traits that are helpful in an industry you want to go to, even though you're coming from somewhere else. Give that a try. We'll see you next time.